Hi everyone, welcome to my Campus GPS Facebook Live. This is the place where we talk about how parents can help their high school student prepare for university. And tonight we're talking about how to help your child write about their accomplishments on a scholarship application without them feeling like they're bragging. So I help students to prepare scholarship applications, and it's not really that uncommon that when I'm working with a student, they'll say something like, isn't that bragging? Or how do I say that without it sounding like it's bragging? So some students really are in this kind of mindset that anytime I talk about anything good that I've done or any accomplishments, any achievements, I'm bragging. So we want to change that because that is not true, and that mindset can really hold them back from applying for scholarships and winning scholarships. So, in our society, we really value modesty and humility, and we don't like show-offs. And teenagers are really loath to draw any attention to themselves or talk about anything good that they've done because they don't want to be called out by their peers for being a show-off or for being a braggart. And nobody likes a braggart or a show-off, I get that. But being too humble can be a disaster when we're talking about scholarships. This is not the time to be too humble. So the scholarship application is your opportunity to talk about those achievements. It's not a time to hold back. But it's sometimes difficult for students to know how to do that, and in a way that they feel comfortable with, especially when they have to sit down and actually write out those accomplishments and discuss them in some detail. It can be kind of an excruciating task for some students, and they're really sometimes, they don't even know where to start. So, but it's important that they learn, because here's the thing, they will need to develop some level of comfort with being able to communicate these things, because they'll need to do so in the future if they want to be successful. So I'm talking about being able to identify and communicate those achievements, the accomplishments, skills, qualities, those things, because they're important not only for scholarships, but also for when it comes time to sit down to do their resume, to do their cover letter, and to do job interviews. So this is an important skill for them to develop, a life skill really. And this is doing their scholarship applications, and learning how to do this now is really good practice for when they'll have to do that in the future. So to help you get the ball rolling, I'm going to give you tonight 5 tips and 5 ways to help to kind of change that mindset, and some practical things that you can help them with so that they can get down to discussing those achievements without being held back, feeling like icky because they're bragging. Okay? So I'm Janet McDonald, and I'm a former university admissions officer, and now with my Campus GPS, I help high school students and parents with preparing for university. So before we get into the 5 tips, I just want to go over 2 things that I think are kind of key foundational things that hopefully your student can keep in mind while they're going through the process. Because I think it will be helpful just to kind of set that foundation for them. The first thing is that they hopefully can remember throughout the process that they are simply communicating facts. They are not making up stuff. They're not embellishing their accomplishments or anything like that. They're just stating facts. This is factual information, and I'm passing on factual information. So sometimes that can kind of help to get, beyond that kind of fear of bragging. The other thing, hopefully that they can keep in mind as well, is that the people who are reading their scholarship application, they want to hear their success story. They want to hear about their accomplishments and their achievements, especially if they've had any kind of struggle over the course of doing them. They really do want to hear about their story. So if your student can keep that in mind, this is what they want to hear about, then that again could be a good kind of foundational thing for them to keep in mind. So let's get into the 5 tips to help them, some things that are a little bit more practical, and then a couple of mindset things too. So the first tip is to show some vulnerability. So sometimes people who are boasting or who are bragging, they might be telling you what they did, but they're not willing to admit any mistakes or failures that they've had along the way. So they're talking more about kind of their achievement, but not admitting to any problems or failures or mistakes or anything like that along the way. So if your student can understand that it's okay to talk about any types of problems that they've had while trying to reach this goal, this achievement, whatever it is, any, small failures, problems, struggles, challenges that they've met along the way, and, who hasn't met some kind of challenge along the way, some hoop that they had to, roadblock that they had to get through in order to get to their final destination, to get to their goal. So that is actually, it can be a really positive thing, in fact, to communicate during, when you're discussing how you achieved this thing. Now, you don't want to make anything up, and you don't want to embellish any problems, make them a lot bigger than what they actually were, but it can really be helpful if you have had any failures or any kind of problems along the way and you talk about how you overcame them. It can be a really helpful thing because it shows determination, it shows perseverance. If you've had those struggles along the way and then you were able to overcome them. So instead of, the bragging, like you haven't ever made a mistake or anything, it's okay to show that you have and to show some of that vulnerability. So knowing that might alleviate some of that fear of bragging with your student. The second tip is to focus on the skills and the work that went into reaching this goal or getting this achievement, completing this task or whatever it was. So you want to have them to focus on that, and that again might kind of alleviate a little bit of that fear of bragging, and then kind of weave a bit of a personal story in there too, because you don't want to leave out the personal side of it. So maybe, for example, your student is applying for a scholarship for students entering a specific program. So some universities and external organizations will have scholarships for students who are entering into specific programs, computer science or engineering or medical sciences or whatever. And they want students or what the student wants to do on those scholarships is to demonstrate their interest in the program and in that field, and back that up with some evidence, like that they actually know what that field is about and these are the reasons why. And if they can use an accomplishment in there to do it, well, then that's even better. So let's say that your son or daughter is applying for entrance scholarship into a computer science program, and maybe they have developed an app. So students are developing apps in high school now. So maybe the app was something like helping people to find used sports equipment in their city or something. I don't even know if that's possible. It would be a pretty cool app to have. But anyway, so they've developed this app. So this is what they could use on that scholarship application, and they could tell about the work that went into developing that app, and then kind of put some personal spin on it as well. So here's an example of something that they might say on the scholarship application. So I spent 2 hours a week for 10 Saturday mornings working on developing the app. But before I started actually developing it, I researched it for several weeks and watched a lot of YouTube videos and took a free online app development course. I got stuck at one point and thought about quitting, but I knew I could do it if I just had some help. So I contacted the computer science department at my local university for assistance, and they helped me get back on track. Then I got my friends and family to test it out over several weeks and give me ideas on how to improve it. It's still not where I want it to be, but it works, and I'm proud that I achieved the goal that I set out for myself. So again, this person is letting the reader know that he or she spent time and energy on the task and that they were dedicated and they persevered through these problems that they had. So talking more about this work and kind of what went into reaching that goal can help student feel like they're talking more about the experience and not just, hey, look at me, I'm so great. Okay, so tip number 3 is similar to the other one. It's to focus on what they've learned and then how they're going to use that learning in the future. So using that same example that I just mentioned about the student who developed the app, they could say something like, I learned how much I enjoy working on a larger project, especially with computers. I learned how to plan my time and to really focus on a task. And I learned I need to ask people for help when I get stuck. I'm really excited about using my new skills at Queen's University or Waterloo or wherever it is they're applying, and to learn more about programming. So he or she is focusing on the skills that they've learned and then how they're going to apply those skills. Okay, so the 4th tip is for students who might be a little bit at a loss about what to talk about. Maybe they don't have a lot of achievements that they can think of, or maybe they have several and they're not sure which one to use. So this tip is just to trade off with another person, like a good friend who knows them well and who has known them over a period of time, to trade off with them what you or they think of what your accomplishment or accomplishments are. So your student, for example, could ask a friend, what do you think is an accomplishment that you think I could use on this scholarship application, or what kinds of things do you think I should talk about? And then they can reciprocate and do the same thing for the other student. So this is just helping them to get a bit of a different perspective on their accomplishments, something they might not really have thought about, a different view on things, and that can sometimes be a good way to get them thinking and to give them ideas about what to use on their application as well. And it can be a little bit of a confidence booster for them as well, to have somebody say, I really admired that time that you did this. It took a lot of courage to do that. Maybe they did a speech or something like that. It took a lot of courage to do that. I'm not sure if I could have done that myself, and that sort of thing. Okay, so the 5th tip is something that is probably a little bit more general, and it's more around this kind of idea of mindset of how some students think about any time I discuss anything about myself, any kind of achievement, it means I'm bragging. So that's something that we want to change. And the goal of this tip is really to help your child to become more comfortable with taking appropriate pride in their achievements and being comfortable in accepting praise for things that they've done. So I would suggest that you suggest to your child that they practice giving compliments and receiving compliments. And when I say receiving compliments, I mean receiving them gracefully, gratefully, and in a way that they don't just shrug it off and kind of make light of it. They just accept it and move on. So, for example, if somebody gives them a compliment, they just say something like, "Thank you, I appreciate that," and then zip it. And then don't say anything more. Don't laugh it off and say, "Oh, it wasn't that much," or "I didn't really do that much," or "Oh, I hate the way this looks," or whatever. Just take the compliment gracefully, gratefully, and just move on. This can be really difficult for a lot of people, but younger people in particular can really kind of struggle with that. But again, it's good practice for the future, because this is something that can help them in situations like in interviews and in work situations and receiving feedback from their managers and things like that. And over time, this will help them to, shift that mindset and help them to become more comfortable with taking a little bit of pride in their accomplishments, and to really kind of be more accepting of well-deserved praise. Okay, so here's an idea where you can help your student put this into practice immediately. So you don't need to have a scholarship application in hand. You can actually just, the purpose of this exercise is just to get to practice. So you can have your student write down one of their accomplishments, and it can really be anything, within reason, not, I got up before 10 o'clock this morning or whatever, but the purpose is really just to practice. So you can help them by helping them to remember the first 3 tips that I gave, which were the practical tips. The first one is showing vulnerability. So if they encountered a problem, if they had a mistake along the way, discuss it. Talk about what the problem was and how they dealt with it, how they overcame that problem. And like I say, there's usually something that goes wrong along the way that they can use for that. The second thing is to describe the work and the skills that they use to accomplish the goal. And the third thing is to focus on what they learned and then how they're going to use that learning in the future. And through those 3 things, if they just kind of keep that in mind, it will help them to be able to discuss those accomplishments without that icky feeling like they're bragging. So this is all about helping to get them more comfortable with identifying their accomplishments and then communicating them to others, and feeling good about that and being able to take some pride and feel okay with that. Okay, so that's it for the tips for tonight. But speaking of bragging, do you know that my blog was named one of the top education blogs in Canada? So you can access that information, a lot of great free information about scholarships, admissions, and career exploration on my website, and that is mycampusgps.ca/blog, B-L-O-G. So if you found this helpful, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a comment or share it with someone else who you think might benefit from it. And that's it for tonight, and I really thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.